Be here, and thank you, Dr. Dilip, and all the chairpersons. It's such a big topic. 6 minutes is too small, but I'll try and do justification to the topic. Oh, okay. Thank you. I thought 6 minutes, all right. So I will not waste my time. Why sizing matters and consequence of errors of sizing. If you undersize, there's a paravalvular regurgitation, valve embolization, poor anchoring and migration, it may move up and down, hemodynamic failure, and suboptimal leaflet coaptation, which may cause halt. Then what is ideal is optimal sizing. This secures sutureless complete anchoring of the TAVR valve, minimum or no paravalvular leak, excellent hemodynamics with minimum gradients and no leak, durable leaflet function and predictable deployment. This is what you want. So focus on optimal sizing. And what happens if you oversize? If you oversize balloon expandable valve by more than 20%, there's a higher risk of annular rupture, then conduction disturbance, pacemakers, prosthesis under expansion, reduced valve durability and asymmetric expansions. That's why assessing the size is very, very important. Anatomy first. 3-step, we used to do an echo before, but I think we have, and balloon in the beginning, they were looking at, if you have a challenge with imaging, balloon can be done. How do? You need to choose between the hinge points, pace it well, and dilate the balloon of appropriate size if you're not an MDCT. And remember that there has to be 4 indirect signs of correct balloon sizing. No balloon movement in the valve when you are fully inflated, waist at the annular level, tightest portion. Third, no residual contrast regurgitation between the maximally inflated balloon and the hinge points of the aortic annulus, and then calcified leaflets played against the coronary ostia. If you see all of that, if you not had a great CT scan because of severe calcification or whatever other reasons, you can use this as a surrogate method. But the most important is MDCT. I think we had such an excellent talk. I would just put a little more words into what was discussed. You need to look at multiple things. Look at the virtual annular plane identification, minimum maximum diameters both in sagittal and coronal. Perimeter is very, very important, derived diameters, then area derived diameters. I think these two are more important than just the diameter that you measure. Also, you look at sinus of Valsalva dimensions, STJ diameter and height, coronary ostia heights above the annulus, and look at the aortic angulation, how horizontal it becomes, so that you can, plan whether you need a balloon expandable valve or a snare if you're using self-expanding. Then you have LVOT eccentricity, it's important, and calcification, especially if you have bicuspid aortic valve. And finally, the axis, iliofemoral vessel dimensions. So when you start at the aortic root, very important to know whether it's tricuspid or bicuspid. Also spend few minutes at the LVOT, if it becomes smaller or larger compared to the annulus. So you know what it looks like, whether it is flared, tapered, or tubular. These 3 gives you what kind of size and how aggressive can you be on sizing, larger device and post dilations. Then sinus of Valsalva diameters are very important. You need more than 30. Again, as the diameter of the TAVR valve increases, you need more diameter in the sinus of Valsalva, along with coronary heights of 10 millimeter. But if you have a large sinus, about 35, and then if you have a coronary height of even 5 in a 26 mm or 23 mm valve, it really doesn't matter. You need to factor in all of that. Sinotubular junction diameter is also important, especially if you're using balloon expandable platform, because if that is severely calcified or smaller than the annulus, you may cause damage to the sinotubular junction with the balloon, in which case you may have to load the balloon slightly deeper when you're loading the device onto the balloon, or partially you inflate, and the second inflation has to be balloon more LV oriented than the aortic oriented. Now coming to the aortic root anatomy, I think all of us have, very beautifully all have looked at it. it may become repetitive, but I'll still look at the hinge point planes. Means you need to look at these are the things. Look at these three bottom, the Nadir's hinge points, then hinge point plane. You put a virtual ring, that is where you're probably aiming your device when you're considering. It is the tightest part of the aortic root and primary anchoring plane for sutureless transcatheter heart valve deployment. That's what you need to aim for. And when you also look at the key other measurements, you look at the subannular LVOT, at least 2 millimeter below the hinge point plane, lower anchoring boundary, that is where the lower part of the device anchors. Virtual annular plane, that is 3 hinge points, what I showed. Then sinus of Valsalva, width as well as the height determine coronary anatomy and the risk of coronary obstruction. Sinotubular junction I just mentioned. And in ascending aorta is also important. If it's more than 4.5, 5, then you may have little difficulty. You need stiffer wires. The valve may can't. So why these are important? What are the most important thing? Annulus, area, perimeter, primarily sizing input. Undersizing or oversizing depends on this. Coronary height and sinus width are very important, may influence which platform you may use. Calcium distribution, this is one of the single most important predict. Sealing of the THV, expansion and conduction issues, LVOT anatomy. Coming to the primary sizing references, when we look at it, what modifies them? If you have a calcification, if there is no calcification, use a size equal or more than 1 millimeter above the annular diameter. If there is a mild to moderate, target 0.5 millimeter above the annular size. If there is a severe diffuse calcification, almost make it near equal or annular size. When you have a borderline anatomy, there's a MyValve has an advantage because they give you an increment of 1.5 millimeter compared to other balloon expandable or self-expanding which are 3 millimeters. So we know these IFUs are already there with you all. What is balloon expandable valve strengths and how do you select them? I think rapid pacing is absolutely essential when you use a balloon expanding platforms. Mandatory 160 to 200 beats per minute to have a systolic blood pressure of probably less than 60-50. Then balloon overfill for larger, again it becomes little out of context. Then the delivery system allows you to flex and get commissural alignments as well. Then you have balloon sizing adjunct if CTTs are discordant. Then for a self-expanding, when you look at it, primary sizing is by the perimeter. Here, again, what you do for a self-expanding, I'll go here. CT parameter is primarily a perimeter, controlled oversizing. Here, you can go up to 10 to 20%, but if you're doing balloon expandable, it is 5 to 10%. Don't get too aggressive with balloon expanding. Implantation depth critical, the determinant of pacemakers, go between 2 to 3, ideal. If you go anything beyond 5, there's a higher probability of left bundle or a complete heart blocks. Supraannular advantage you have 10 to 15% larger effective orifice area for the same nominal size versus balloon expandable. And the great advantage is reposition. You have multiple attempts to really position where you want. The drawback is higher permanent pacemakers. I think I will leave it at that and take some questions and show you some simultaneously, I think. Thank you.
I think you can show this slide because this slide seems to be more important than anything. That is why you stopped over there.
I know there are certain things that you must see to understand. When you have calcification, I think this is one of the most important things because you never want to have a rupture. If there is none, use at least 1 millimeter and above, mild to moderate, upsize by 0.5. If it's a severe dense, you may have to just go by nominal or slightly lesser. Also, when you have an intermediate sizing, try and avoid taking a larger device, because there is faster degeneration if you use a larger device versus choosing a smaller one and oversizing, overinflating it. You have a better durability, lesser pacemaker, lesser PVL. So don't try to oversize in the anxiety. Again, another important thing is annular ellipticity, especially this happens with severe bicuspid aortic lesions. So that's why area dependence is important, and also, use a platform which is less aggressive, because if a raphe is very calcified, the device will move in the opposite direction. So if you have any very dense calcification, it may even cause perforations on that side. Self-expanding with post dilation may be good option, but if you're going with a balloon expand platform, don't get very aggressive. You may do it 2 post dilations, but don't do the very aggressive in the first. There's a newer notion that the anchoring, the interaction between the device and the person does not happen at the annulus, but all through between the STJ and the LVOT. So you need to take multiple levels at the annulus, every 2 millimeter above and 2 millimeter below, and then very often the probability of downsizing the valve has been about 90% of the case. The sizes have been reduced to have lesser pacemakers, better performance of the valve, good gradients and durability. So, and when you go to the slightly challenging situation, sigmoid septum or septal hypertrophy, you can consider alcohol ablation prior to doing. Otherwise, there's always a melon seeding, slightly it may move up. So in this case, you can use a self-expanding and go a little deeper. But if you're going with a balloon expandable pace for a longer duration, inflate, anchor very, very well, slightly deeper than usual. And when you have a shorter membranous septum, I think use the one which has lower, radial force. Balloon expandable are better. Also, a self-expandable with lesser radial force. Coming to valve in valve, I think you all discussed. One single thing I would like to tell you, please identify the surgical valve. It's very, very important. And the true ID of that previous surgical valve is your starting point, not the valve size written on the discharge summary. Go to the website, look at the internal diameter of that particular surgical valve and start from there. And if second one is true ID, you've already got it. And TAVR nominal size should be 90 to 100% of the surgical valve true ID. If you try to get too bigger valve just because there is a ppm, the valve may migrate or it may be associated with halt and other things. The coronary obstruction risk also goes up if you use a bigger valve in these people, because the leaflets of the first surgical valve create a covered stent within which the second set of leaflets would open. That's why you need at least VTC of 4 millimeter or more. Don't be very, very close. Otherwise, always protect the coronaries. And higher implant is important when you have the very small valve, previous valve, slightly get it higher, maybe 2-3 millimeter. Don't get too deep. And key takeaways and right valve size, if I have to mention, today MDCT is non-negotiable. Although we look at, contrast-induced nephropathy, as my colleague Dr. Shin was telling, if you give minimum contrast just to assess the annulus and the adjacent areas and forget about periphery and all that, we can still do with 30 to 50 ml contrast. Annulus is the starting point, not the end point. You need to look at every other parameters. Balloon expandable valve, these are intraannular, reproducible, horizontal aorta and coronary access friendly. Self-expandable, they are supraannular, advantage for small annuli. Valve in valve, low ejection fraction, you don't have to pace them, that's the advantage, but downside is higher pacemaker rates. Bicuspid aortic valve demands multiplanar supraannular sizing, downsize by default. Challenges would be calcification, conduction risk, coronary heights and life expectancy modify final choices. If you have younger people, you want different valve positioning, and if you have very old, only one valve would suffice, probably you'll go aggressively with one valve. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Girish, for this excellent talk. So let me open up the discussion. So you get a CT. This discussion is not only for you, anyone in the audience can participate. I think that will be great. You get a CT. You don't have a systolic frame. You only have a diastolic frame. You do an analysis in 75% diastole. You get a annulus measurement. What is the consequence that comes to your mind if the CT analysis is only done in diastolic frame, that is 75% diastolic frame?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Very often you need to look at multiple things. You don't only look at the annulus, you look at all other parameters. You look at go 2 millimeter down, go 2 millimeter up. That's one. Second, you know you may have to add by about 10 to 15% extra if you have gone in a diastolic frame. You look at the mitral valve, what's happening, how much of diastole is it? And thirdly, if you're ambiguous at that point in time, you can also do very good balloon assessment. If you're in a dilemma, I think choose probably depending on the calcification. If the calcification is not too high, oversizing by about 1 millimeter is much safer, whether you use balloon or non-balloon. But if it's highly calcified, I think I would just go by maybe, whatever I've got on that diastole plus 0.5 or so.
So that's an excellent view. So just let me add to that. The difference between a systolic and a diastolic measurement, that is 25% systolic and the 75% diastolic, is almost about 10%. So diastole will give you 10% lesser measurement